In the rush of saving lives, Dr. Alina Brooks never imagined her skin color would be the barrier between her and her duty. But tonight, as she raced through the hospital halls, a new reality was waiting to stop her in her tracks. Dr. Alina Brooks, one of the top cardiothoracic surgeons in the country, sped through the pristine corridors of New York University Hospital, the weight of her responsibilities pressing down with each step. A critical emergency, a patient with an acute aortic dissection, had just arrived, and every second counted. She was ready to perform her role as a healer, her mind solely focused on saving a life. The familiar hum of the hospital surrounded her, but tonight something else echoed in her mind, a nagging unease she couldn't shake. Just as she reached the emergency room doors, a strong arm blocked her path. "Hey, you? Where do you think you're going?" The sharp voice of a security guard cut through the air. Alina stopped abruptly, her breath catching as she looked up at the guard, a tall, stocky figure with a stern gaze. "I'm Dr. Brooks," she said, trying to keep her voice steady as she glanced at the guard. "I need to get in. My patient is waiting, and it's a critical emergency." Her ID badge hung clearly around her neck, but the guard's eyes didn't even flicker toward it. His gaze remained cold, skeptical. "Sorry, Doc, you'll need to show me your ID or back off," he replied, his tone unyielding. The seconds ticked by, heavy with disbelief and frustration. Alina realized with a painful clarity that she was being held back not because of any lack of credentials, but because of her skin color. Her pulse quickened, her mind racing with a mix of urgency and anger as she reached for her ID, all while trying to keep her focus on the patient waiting for her inside. Just then, another figure appeared down the hall. Dr. Michael Harris, her white colleague, strode toward the ER doors with his usual confident stride. Relief washed over Alina as she called out, "Michael, tell him who I am, he won't let me through." Dr. Harris slowed, looking from Alina to the guard, his expression shifting as a flicker of discomfort crossed his face. She waited for him to step in, to clear up this blatant misunderstanding, but instead, he hesitated, then shrugged, his eyes darting away. "Sorry, Alina," he mumbled, not meeting her gaze. "I've got my own patient waiting." With that, he brushed past her, disappearing through the doors without another word. Hello friends, right now, write in the comments your name and where you are watching this video from. We really appreciate each of you. You are incredibly important to us and to the promotion of our channel. Thanks to you, we can tell such stories and open our eyes to injustice. You are our inspiration, and together, we can make this world a better place. Enjoy watching. The cold indifference in his response hit her harder than she anticipated. She felt a surge of betrayal and isolation, realizing that even among colleagues, she was left alone to face this discrimination. Her heart ached with the weight of it, a stark reminder that no matter her title or achievements, some would still only see her skin. As the doors swung shut behind Dr. Harris, Alina stood frozen, the shock and disbelief mingling with a quiet resolve. She had spent her life defying odds, proving her worth with every patient she saved. Yet here she was, forced to confront a barrier built on nothing more than prejudice. In that cold, silent hallway, Dr. Alina Brooks realized that sometimes racism wasn't loud or direct. It was in the quiet indifference of those who should have been allies. But tonight, even with everything on the line, she was forced to face it alone. Finally able to access her phone, Alina showed her digital ID to the guard. He scanned it, hesitated, then stepped aside with visible reluctance. But the delay had already cost precious seconds. Heart pounding, Alina hurried through the doors and down the corridor toward the operating room, hoping she could still make a difference. When she entered the sterile environment of the OR, she saw Dr. Robert Thompson, head of the surgery department, already standing over the patient. His hands were steady, focused on the procedure, but his frustration was palpable as he glanced up. "Where the hell were you, Brooks?" he barked without lifting his gaze from the delicate operation. His tone carried the weight of irritation, unsoftened by any empathy. Alina took a steadying breath. "I was stopped at the entrance," she replied, trying to keep her voice composed. She wanted to explain, but knew that any detail would likely be dismissed. "Stopped?" Thompson's scoff was almost audible through his mask. "Did you forget how to enter the hospital after all these years?" His words dripped with sarcasm, dismissing her explanation without a second thought. A wave of frustration washed over Alina as she processed his response. It wasn't just that he doubted her. He didn't care. To him, her experience was either inconsequential or simply her own problem. In that moment, she realized how isolated she truly was, even within the walls of her own hospital. Thompson's indifference, his unwillingness to acknowledge what she faced, stung more deeply than she expected. This wasn't just about a delayed operation or a moment of disrespect. It was a painful reminder of the hidden biases woven into the fabric of her workplace. Thompson's dismissive response underscored a reality she had long suspected. Prejudice wasn't just present in confrontations with strangers. It thrived quietly within the very institutions that claimed to uphold equality. In the weeks that followed, Alina wrestled with her thoughts. She considered reporting the incident, exposing the subtle discrimination she had endured, but the possible career repercussions held her back. She had worked too hard to reach this point, to secure her place at New York University Hospital, a place where she once believed her skills would be her only measure. One afternoon, as she made her rounds, Alina's attention was caught by a conversation just down the hallway. The familiar tone of hurt and frustration echoed from a young black resident, Dr. Tanya Williams, who was speaking to a friend. And then he had the nerve to say, "I probably only got into med school because of affirmative action. Like I didn't earn my place here." Tanya's voice wavered, her pain undeniable. Alina's footsteps slowed, her heart tightening as she listened. Tanya's words struck a familiar chord, stirring memories of her own struggles. In that instant, Alina felt her silence become heavier, almost suffocating. She realized that by staying quiet, she wasn't just protecting herself. She was inadvertently reinforcing the very cycle of prejudice that affected doctors like Tanya. With a renewed sense of purpose, Alina decided she couldn't remain silent any longer. She would take action, not only for herself, but for the countless others who faced similar discrimination. This wasn't just about her own journey. It was about the legacy she would leave behind for future generations of doctors who, like her, deserved to be seen for their talent, not their skin color. This was no longer just about survival. Dr. Alina Brooks was ready to become a force for change. What had once been a quiet endurance turned into a mission. She wasn't the only one affected by prejudice, and she knew the time had come to address the problem for everyone, not just herself. With newfound resolve, Alina began meticulously documenting every incident of discrimination she witnessed or heard about within the hospital walls. She encouraged other minority staff to do the same, quietly organizing an informal support network for those who felt overlooked or discriminated against. Her days were filled with life-saving surgeries, and her reputation continued to grow, not just within New York, but across the nation. Her skills as a surgeon were undeniable, but now so was her determination to bring change. One afternoon, Alina received an unexpected summons to Dr. Thompson's office. Her heart clenched as she walked down the sterile halls, each step heavy with apprehension. Had her efforts to document these issues reached the wrong ears? She braced herself, fearing a reprimand or worse. To her surprise, Dr. Thompson was not alone. Seated with him were members of the hospital board, and to Alina's shock, a reporter from the New York Times. She hadn't anticipated this kind of audience. "Alina," Thompson began, visibly uncomfortable as he shifted in his chair, "the hospital is about to launch a new diversity and inclusion initiative, and we'd like you to lead the project." He glanced at the board members before adding, "Your experience and insights could make a real difference here." Alina's initial reaction was one of stunned disbelief. This could be a golden opportunity to create lasting change, a rare chance to reshape the hospital's culture from the inside. But was this genuine, or just a public relations ploy to give the appearance of change? She looked from Thompson to the faces of the board members, gauging their sincerity, and sensed that this wasn't going to be an easy decision. Her mind raced through the possibilities. This role could indeed open doors for real impact, but only if she had the power to make substantive changes, not just act as a symbolic figurehead. She knew this position came with risk. She could become the face of change without holding the reins. Yet if she declined, she might be turning her back on a chance to protect others from experiencing what she and countless others had endured. With a steady voice, Elena accepted the position, but laid out her conditions firmly. She would take on this role only if she had unrestricted access to hiring and promotion records, the authority to overhaul outdated policies, and genuine support for her initiatives. She wasn't interested in tokenism. She was determined to bring about measurable progress. In the months that followed, Elena threw herself into her work with unmatched resolve. She launched comprehensive anti-racism training programs for all staff, overhauled the hospital's hiring policies to prioritize diversity, and created a mentorship system for minority staff members. Slowly, her vision for a more inclusive hospital began to take shape. However, not everyone welcomed the changes. The first signs of resistance appeared as anonymous emails trickled in, warning her to stop disrupting traditions. Colleagues who had once greeted her warmly now avoided eye contact in the halls. And then there was Dr. Michael Harris, the very same colleague who had ignored her pleas that night outside the ER. He quietly gathered a group of like-minded doctors who resented the new policies, undermining her efforts and spreading discontent. Elena soon learned that Dr. Harris had been discouraging residents from participating in the programs she had worked tirelessly to implement. He began circulating misinformation about the changes, sowing seeds of doubt and resentment among staff members. For Elena, the betrayal was both personal and professional, a stark reminder of the uphill battle she was fighting. The tension reached a boiling point one morning when she discovered that Dr. Harris was openly questioning the new hiring practices, suggesting that standards had been compromised in favor of diversity. The statement, thinly veiled as concern for quality, was the latest in a series of underhanded tactics aimed at destabilizing her work. Elena felt the weight of the opposition, yet each setback only strengthened her resolve. She knew the path to change was rarely smooth, and this was no exception. The resistance she faced highlighted just how deeply rooted prejudice was, not only in society but within the very institutions sworn to uphold health and equality. Determined to continue despite the obstacles, Elena resolved to dismantle this culture of silence and complacency, one policy at a time. Change wasn't simple. It was messy, painful, and often unwelcome, and Dr. Elena Brooks was discovering that firsthand. What had started as a quiet indifference toward her mission had transformed into an outright campaign against her efforts, revealing just how deeply resistance to progress ran within the walls of the institution she served. As the months wore on, Elena realized the path she had chosen wasn't just difficult. It was riddled with subtle and overt obstacles, each one designed to undermine her progress. The more she pushed for meaningful change, the more she encountered a wall of active and passive resistance that seemed unbreakable. The anonymous emails continued, filled with warnings and veiled threats, reminding her that many saw her mission as an attack on their traditions. Colleagues who once greeted her warmly now turned a cold shoulder, avoiding her in the halls as though acknowledging her would somehow taint them. These were more than silent rebukes. They were barriers she felt with every step she took, each one whispering that her efforts were unwelcome. And then there was Dr. Michael Harris. What began as an uncomfortable silence the night he ignored her outside the emergency room had evolved into something far more insidious. Harris, who had been her peer and colleague, now led a faction of staff members who were openly critical of her policies. He questioned every change, casting doubt on her initiatives in subtle yet cutting ways, each statement carefully crafted to sound like genuine concerns about the hospital's future. Elena's changes are ambitious, he would say to residents in passing, his tone dripping with skepticism. But we can't let standards slip in the name of diversity, can we? His words spread through the staff like poison, casting shadows over Elena's work and undermining the trust she had built. The residents, already vulnerable to hierarchy and eager to please their superiors, began to question the programs she'd implemented. One morning, Elena overheard Dr. Harris speaking with a group of young interns near the break room, his voice carrying just enough for her to hear. "I don't know about all these new training sessions. Feels like we're spending more time talking about feelings than focusing on what really matters: skills and merit." Each word felt like a blow. Elena understood the power of subtle sabotage, how it could dismantle progress quietly, inch by inch, until nothing remained of the original vision. Yet, she couldn't afford to ignore these attacks. They were chipping away at the very foundation she was trying to build, planting seeds of doubt in the minds of the next generation of doctors. Determined not to be defeated, Elena began documenting every instance of resistance and pushback, every disparaging comment and act of defiance. She knew this battle wasn't only about policy changes. It was a fight for the soul of the institution. For every resident discouraged by Dr. Harris, she reached out to another, mentoring them personally, sharing her journey, and instilling in them the value of equity and respect in medicine. The tension finally came to a head during a staff meeting, where Harris openly challenged her latest initiative, a mentoring program for minority residents designed to support their career development. "I just wonder if focusing on one group is fair to everyone," he said smoothly, casting a glance around the room. "Isn't our responsibility to treat all residents equally?" Elena took a deep breath, refusing to let his words fluster her. "Dr. Harris, equality doesn't mean ignoring the challenges some of us face daily. This program is about providing support where it's needed to create a truly level playing field." A silence filled the room as her words settled in. Some of her colleagues shifted uncomfortably, but others met her gaze with nods of understanding. For the first time, Elena saw that not everyone was against her. There were allies here, even if they were fewer in number than those who resisted. But she also knew that Harris wasn't finished. His campaign would continue, each small act of resistance a reminder of how deeply ingrained the problem was. How change wasn't just about implementing new policies, but transforming a mindset that had been built over decades. Elena's resolve hardened. She would continue, not only for herself, but for the countless residents, doctors, and patients who deserved an institution free from prejudice. Hey friends, sorry to disturb you. Please take a moment to share your name and where you're watching this video from in the comments. We truly appreciate each and every one of you. Your support means the world to us and plays a crucial role in promoting our channel. Because of you, we can share these important stories and shed light on injustices. You inspire us, and together, we can make the world a better place. Enjoy the video.